I have an analogy I want to use. You guys know I love to make relationship analogies. And studies show that 30% of marriages, or 30% of people's college relationships lead to marriage. And that's because people tend to marry the last person they dated in college. This is particularly true. I'm a good old Midwest boy. This is particularly true in the Midwest and South. People used to go to Ball State. We used to say as guys, a lot of girls would go to Ball State looking for their MRS degree. That was more popular than a PhD. And look, it makes sense for a man or a woman to be looking for their spouse on a college campus. The people are bright. They're motivated. They come from relatively good families. It makes sense to go after your spouse on a college campus. But is it really the smartest thing to do long term? That's where I question. I see a lot of people end up settling. And that's what I'm worried about here with Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones. I'm concerned that Jerry Jones is about to make the mistake I've seen a lot of people make in college. Dak Prescott, he spent 4 years on the Cowboys campus. He's now ready to graduate and get his diploma. And Jerry and Dak are looking at each other. It's like, man, we've been together for 4 years. And it's time to graduate and move on to the next step in our life. Let's get married. Let's get married long term. But according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Jerry Jones wants a complicated prenuptial agreement before he's willing to say I do. There's a disagreement about guaranteed money and the length of the contract. That's where the deadlock is. And that, to me, is Jerry Jones saying, I want a prenup. And if you want a prenup, that means you shouldn't be getting married. You shouldn't be settling for this quarterback that you're really not that confident in long term. That's why you're arguing about guaranteed money and the length of the contract. I say Jerry should prolong the engagement. Give Dak another year of the runaround and see if he's really the person you want to marry and spend your whole quarterback. Look, these are Jerry's golden years. He's been on this Cowboys campus forever. All of his friends are saying, oh, Jerry, you need to settle down. Just get with Dak. He's the right one. You're not going to do any better. Jerry, listen to me. Don't settle. Put the franchise tag on him. Make him dance for another year. Make him earn that long-term contract. Marcellus, I think that if Jerry Jones does a long-term deal with the Cowboys this offseason, he's settling, just like I've seen a lot of people do once they graduate college. Hey, I'm dating this person, might as well make it a long-term commitment. It would be a mistake for Jerry to settle.
Oh, man. Even though I disagree, that was well said, brother. You took me back to the locker room days when we could look around our locker room per man and per couple and literally know who you met in college versus who you met in the league. And if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So obviously you don't want to marry exactly who the last person you met. You want to keep your eyes open. That said, man, you talk about Dak Prescott being the Rodney Dangerfield of the NFL. I'm talking about no respect in terms of who he is, because he's a fourth rounder in the overhyped and over-scrutinized Dallas Cowboys uniform. And I think that's where he's really fallen victim, is the fact that the branding is already kind of formed around him and he can't escape from it. Let's talk about his immeasurables, which most people don't properly value, so therefore you don't think he's worth this money. And when he has the measurables, we still move the goalposts on Dak Prescott. First, he was a winner, but he didn't have the numbers. Then he got the numbers, but other parts had holes in the roster construction, so he didn't have the wins. And then we said, oh, you know what? Who are you? You're just a guy who is functional, but not really a franchise quarterback. Dak Prescott is the kind of guy that can go out there and win a Super Bowl. And you know what would happen after that Super Bowl win? Someone would say, oh, but the defense carried him in the Super Bowl. That's how we treat Dak Prescott in terms of his assessment. I think Jerry is making a smart move, which is entering these negotiations, trying to make Dak one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid quarterback. It's Dak's time. You can't postpone this anymore because it's inevitable he's going to get paid.
All right, listen, this is Speak for Yourself from the crib. So let's go out to LaVar Arrington's crib and bring him into this conversation. LaVar, I'm sure you agree with me. This would be a classic case of someone settling rather than going out and getting exactly what they want at the quarterback position.
Nah, B, I'm disagreeing with you, son. And here's the reason why I'm going to tell you I disagree with you, all right?
Yeah.
Jones owns Dallas Cowboys campus, if we hadn't noticed that, by the way. He's owned it since 89. And since 89, he's always been in a marriage. He only dated maybe once or twice. He dated Quincy Carter. He dated Drew Bledsoe. But for the most part, he's always been in a married relationship. First being married to Troy Aikman, then being married to Tony Romo. Okay, he won in his marriage with Troy Aikman. Got 3 rings. He got Super Bowl
prom
MVP.
king.
But
that's a prom king right there.
Okay.
Of course you married Troy Aikman.
But then he married Tony Romo, and Tony Romo is 2-4. He's 50-50 in the playoffs.
He was a prom king finalist. Of course you married Tony Romo.
All right. Now, and I'm glad that you say that. So he is well-versed on marrying and knowing what winning and losing is by now better than anybody else. By the time you get to the prenuptial agreement, all right, you're doing that prenup, that means that she has won. That person you're marrying has won because it's the final part of the negotiation. You are not going to walk away from the marriage. If you've been married and you've done prenups or not done them, you know this to be very true. You are not going to walk away from the marriage based off of the prenup. You are going to find a compromise because you guys want this to happen. Now, I'll end with this. You're saying wait and get something better, all right? Now, this is interesting because now you have made marriage, the institution of marriage, a one-lane street. See, and this is what I got to school you up on with. It's a two-way street when you get married. So he has to want to go down the aisle, and so does Mr. Dak Prescott. So understand this. You may be settling somewhat, but maybe Dak is settling as well. And one man's trash could turn out to be another person's treasure. You don't want to see that man go somewhere else and win a Super Bowl with the numbers that he has in Dallas. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to drop the mic on that one.
And you also don't want to be the man that settles and is always looking over at your boys and be like, damn, that's what he got over on his football team. He got Patrick Mahomes. He has Russell Wilson. He has Lamar Jackson. They stack everywhere. They boom, 36, 24, 36. And you looking across at your 32.
Don't ever get married. Don't ever get married if you're always looking at somebody else's his piece. Don't ever, hey, everybody out there, don't ever get married if you're looking at somebody else's piece the whole time. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, one, I think you lose that part of your psyche once you get married. You better. If not, you're going to be miserable because there's always going to be a Rolls Royce with shinier rims at the red light. It's just the way it goes. However, once you go Dak, you don't go back. Uncle Jimmy told us, man, and he went Dak. And Dak has the second most wins. You don't let that dude on the streets and let somebody else dust off his little deep throws and dust off the intermediate routes and turn into something great. Nah, you make a family with Dak. Let's go.
Yeah.
Look, y'all got to remember who this is. This is the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. The team we all tune in every Sunday, whether we like them or not. The team that's had Roger Staubach, Troy Aikman, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Have they settled from time to time for a Danny White? Absolutely. But they didn't pay Danny White like he was Roger Staubach. That's the issue here. Dak Prescott to me is Dak Prescott to me is running around like he's the prom king or queen and wants to be treated like he's Russell Wilson. Look, Marcellus said it earlier about if Dak wins the Super Bowl, they're going to say the defense carried it. And you know what? It won't matter because they said the same thing about Russell Wilson, but Seattle still turned around and made him the highest paid quarterback in the league. If Dak has that kind of success, someone like me will flip and I don't care what Jerry Jones pays him if he's the quarterback of a Super Bowl winning team and played a significant role in that. But clearly, I'm just sorry, and I'm not going to get all off into y'all's personal business. I don't want you to have to speak on this. But clearly to me, when you're sitting there with this prenup agreement and you arguing about guaranteed money and you're arguing about length of the contract, at this point, when you've argued the entire 2019 season, here we are in 2020, it's March, ain't nothing to do but sit around at home and think about what you're gonna do, what you're gonna pay this guy. The NFL, the whole country's been shut down, and Jerry is still second guessing himself. That's a big red flag. He's got doubts. He's settling. He doesn't want to settle, nor should he.
Can I say one thing? Can I add one thing to this conversation, please? You know how many times Jerry Jones has gotten married? I told you twice. Do you know how long he dated with the other people that he did not marry? It was always less than 4 years. He has dated Dak for 4 years. You said embarrassed or don't want to do it? No, he went public with Dak. He has been in the public eye, tabloids, news outlets. He has been with Dak for 4 years. That puts him in the only category possible for Jerry Jones, which is marriage. The only people he's ever dated longer was Troy Aikman for 12 years and Tony Romo for 10. It is inevitable that they will get divorced because this is a different type of institution of marriage than just marriage. But he is committed to Dak Prescott, and the numbers show it in the amount of time that he has dated Dak. 4 years, going into 5. Pay that man, do the prenup, go ahead and walk down the aisle, Jerry. Put that ring on it. If you want it, you put a ring on it. Put a ring on it, Jerry.
Hey, let me give you this. Hey, you know what's so funny about Jerry, if you really want to go there? Because Troy Aikman had tremendous success and was a great quarterback. But by the numbers, you can look at Dak Prescott and say comparable, if not better, in terms of number production, but obviously doesn't have the wins in the Super Bowls to dress him up. I think if you look at Jerry, I found Dak as a 4th rounder, and he didn't have many options. And then I played him for 4 years on the cheap. But he should be appreciative of wearing that star, being in my mansion, playing for America's team. So now he wants to play Dak even cheaper, longer. And Dak's like, wait a minute, it's time for me to go out. I'm good now. I've shown that I've earned this amount of love and trust and respect. And Jerry's like, nah, I'm going to lock you down for 5 years, which is really the cheap, because Dak knows if I only play for 4 years, I could go back to the table, get some more love, get some more of this money. Jerry's just trying to play Dak on the cheap. This is not about how much he cares about, how much he loves him. It's just he doesn't see him as great as Dak has performed.
Look, I'm going to summarize this conversation this way, and I really don't want to hear from either one of y'all again. We're talking about two guys that are lucky. If you've met their wives, they've so far overachieved, and they have no leverage in their relationship because their wife has all the leverage. That is the problem with their perspective. And that's why you have to trust someone like me. I've always had the upper hand. I mean, when you look like this and you command the kind of respect that I command, you always have the upper hand. Marcellus, LaVar know nothing about that.
Ain't no other hand.
They're in situations where, look, some men run their house, some men run around their house. That's why they both always sweating. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. And be sure to check out more of the best clips from Speak For Yourself, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.